Hello, and welcome to Everybody Eats, a Washington Wizards podcast on the Blue Wire Network. My name is Varun Shankar. I'm the Wizards reporter for the Washington Post. On this week's episode, Jim Coulter of the Wizards Weekly podcast joins me for the second half of player previews. We spoke about Alex Sarr, Tre Johnson, Bub Carrington, Kyshawn George, and Cam Whitmore. For each player, we looked at what impressed us, what concerns us, and what would be a successful 2025-26 season for the player. We also spoke about the Wizards' first two preseason games. Before we get to that, if you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, please leave a 5-star rating or review. Thank you so much if you're able to do this. I cannot tell you how helpful it is as we continue and try to grow the show. Jim is fantastic. I love talking about the Wizards with him. Let's get to that conversation right now. Joining me now on the Everybody Eats podcast is Jim Coulter of the Wizards Weekly podcast. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm doing okay. Tough Commanders loss last night, but I'm hanging in there. How are you, Varun?
That was brutal. That was really brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
I think you're doing a little better now that you're back into your account and everything's okay.
Yeah, that was a whole
quick recap.
That was a whole thing. Yeah, I fell for a scam. I'm an idiot, and yeah, don't answer random DMs from people on X.
It's a tough one. I almost fell for the same thing. So happy that you got your account back.
But we're all good. We're back.
Plan for today's episode, we're going to give some quick thoughts on the first two preseason games, and then it's on to the second batch of player previews. Today we're looking at Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, Kyshawn George, Tre Johnson, and Cam Whitmore. Before we get to that, though, let's talk about the first two preseason games. Wizards are 1-1. They lose their first preseason game to the Raptors. They win the second against the Knicks, who weren't really playing anybody. Anything stand out to you other than the players that we're about to talk about now?
I think through two games, my biggest worry about this team is the backcourt and dealing with ball pressure on both ends of the floor. And I think the Wizards backcourt kind of struggled with the physicality of the Raptors ball pressure. And I think that is something that's going to be used a lot more throughout the NBA this year after the success that the Pacers had in using full court pressure on their way to the NBA Finals last season. So I think the Wizards are going to have to figure out a way to deal with that. I thought on the other end of the floor as well, it seemed like they did not, the Wizards didn't do a great job of containing the ball when they were trying to pressure, even up at half court and things like that. And I think that is going to put a lot of stress on someone like Alex Sarr to kind of clean things up on the back end. And that was a worry I had about this team going into the season. And I think through two preseason games, I'm still a bit worried about where all of that lands.
The ball pressure was wreaking havoc on the Wizards in the Raptors game. And that makes sense. The Raptors are a incredibly physical team. This is what they do. They beat you up play after play after play, especially your guards. But I mean, we'll talk about some of these guys coming up, and I think that it'll be a point. But Bub Carrington and Tre Johnson really struggled with that pressure. I thought it looked a little bit better against the Knicks, in part because the Knicks don't do as much aggressive work in that area. But definitely something that we'll be keeping in mind. It's something that a young team, a lighter team, just in terms of these are not guys who have fully gotten into their NBA bodies left, is going to deal with more and have more trouble with. But it's something that is really going to be used to pick on the team this year. And on the other side, Alex Sarr defended, I think, the second most shots in the league a season ago, something like that. One of the highest rates in the league, and a lot of that is because the defense at the perimeter is not able to stop the ball well enough, and everything comes down towards him, and then becomes his responsibility. A couple things that stood out to me: I really liked Will Riley's game. Obviously, the 17 points against the Knicks stands out, but you saw the on-ball creation, the ability to string some dribble moves together, and really, he has a great understanding of playing with leverage. I think he really could see when a ball handler is ever so slightly leaning one way or another, and he can get to one of those counters immediately that gets him to the hoop. Crashed in well for offensive rebounds. Thought he hustled really well. The defense is going to be a work in progress with him. He's one of the guys who really needs to put on some weight. He knows that. The team knows that. But I thought it was a really encouraging game for him.
Completely agree on Will Riley. I mean, at his size, his ability to string together dribble moves is really impressive. And I thought those were my two favorite plays from him against the Knicks. He had a couple offensive rebounds, and I liked this place because it shows like he's not afraid of the physicality he needs to get a lot stronger, especially to hold up on the defensive end of the floor. But I like seeing him get in there, and he's not afraid to, seek out contact and things like that. So I think he's been better than I thought through 2 games on the offensive end of the floor, and I'm really impressed. He's just got to find a way to defend, but super young, and he's got a lot of time to figure that out. I also think from a team wide perspective, I thought the spacing at times was a lot better the
Mm.
first couple games. Like there was a lineup out there with CJ and Trey, Chris Middleton, Kyshawn George, and Sarr in the first game against the Raptors. And I don't know, I was like, that's a lot of guys who are threats from the outside. And I think we can throw out some lineups, especially with like Vucevic at the 5, where the Wizards can be, have some pretty good spacing. So I think uh, that is something that's encouraging.
Absolutely. I also thought this is a guy who's I don't think gonna play that much, but Dylan Jones hustled, um, caught up to a couple loose balls, played good defense overall. I don't know what his role is going to look like on this team. I don't know what kind of minutes he's going to see on this team. That's probably something we're going to see later in the season, if I'm going to guess. But this is a former first round pick, only a year. He was in the same draft as Sarr, Carrington, Kyshawn. So curious what he is. Didn't show as much in summer league, but some of the little things showed up for him here, and maybe he's got a future in the rotation. But that's a long ways away. Let's get to the main point of today's episode, which is player previews. Like I said, we're gonna go Alex Sarr, Tre Johnson, Bub Carrington, Kyshawn George, and Cam Whitmore. Let's start with Sarr, and let's start with my first question. What impresses you most about Alex Sarr?
I would say his rate of improvement just impresses me a lot. I think if you look at where he was that first summer league to now, like this is a totally different player. And I think even looking at the first preseason game, I thought he looked completely different from even the end of last season. So I
The
just think
frequency of him rolling was so much different. Just the diversity
agreed,
in how he came off screens.
agreed. And only one 3-point attempt in that first half against the Raptors. I thought his process in terms of the types of shots that he took were a lot better. So yeah, no, overall, I think I've just been extremely impressed. It feels like every time he has like some time off to work on his game, that he's just come back and been a better player. So that to me is just the thing that I was that impresses me the most about him. It's something specific with his game. I just think the versatility defensively is the most impressive thing. Every team is looking for the type of big that can be versatile across different matchups in a playoff setting, can protect the rim, can switch out on the perimeter if necessary. And I think Sarr is that type of player, and every team is kind of looking for that. So
Absolutely. I mean, the package that he has with the length, the athleticism, and the feel for the defensive side of things, you can tell that this is someone who, he has really good timing coming over for those weak side blocks. And then he can also switch onto the perimeter. And there's a lot of different things that you could do. You can play him in drop coverage. You can get him up to touch. You can get him blitzing. You can switch. I mean, there's so many different things that he allows you to do on defense because of that package of skills. I think that like we talked about, he contested a lot of shots this year. Some of that is the Wizards' defense on the perimeter. Some of that is they're also trying to funnel things into him because he's able to get to so many things. The defense was about 3 points per possession better with him on the court versus off the court per cleaning the glass. They forced more turnovers and they fouled less. He, in general, despite being a player who is contesting so many shots, didn't foul that much last year, which I thought was really encouraging and a sign of what he could be on the defensive end. Let's move to the next part, which is what concerns you most about this player. I'll start here. There's still a lot of his game that remains theoretical. The question coming into the NBA was, is he going to be a 5 or a 4? The Wizards played him exclusively at 5 last year. I think that was mostly because of his shooting struggles and just the way that he would destroy their spacing, honestly, if he played at the 4 alongside a traditional center. But if he's going to play at the 5, he's got to get stronger and play with more force inside. If he's going to be at the 4, he's got to shoot a lot better. He was really inefficient last season. That's okay. He's a rookie, but still something that needs to get better. 37% was not a good defensive rebounder either. 37th percentile there. 23rd percentile shooting at the rim. The encouraging thing is his percentage at the rim, I think, is going to go up this year, especially based on what we saw in that first preseason game.
he looks way stronger already.
Right.
Like his body just looks different from last year. I think it was his first bucket against the Raptors where he kind of caught it off the pocket pass. And a lot of times last year, that would have been a turnaround jumper or like a jump hook. And he just put his shoulder into, I forget who was playing center at the time
Mamu.
for the Raptors. Yeah. And he just finished right over him. And it's like, that's what, I want to see from him more this year. It's a change in mindset as well to just force your way to the rim and use your athleticism.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm encouraged on that front. I am still a bit worried about him as a screen setter. And I think setting screens is probably the most like undervalued skill in the NBA because it is a skill. I mean, there are bigs who are really good at it. And I mean, there are multiple screens set every possession, and there's a reason teams set them. And the guys who can set those kind of brushing screens just opens things up for your offense so much. And I don't know if he's ever going to have like the frame necessarily to be great at that, even if he gets stronger. So I think that's just something that I'm a little bit concerned about long term. I agree with the rebounding, but I think you can kind of build around that as a team.
Mhm.
I mean, the Thunder last year played Chet at the five a ton, and he's not necessarily the greatest rebounder, and they were still able to kind of make up for that in other ways. So I would say that the finishing is still a concern, even though I'm encouraged, and the screen setting to me is like a big thing that he needs to improve on.
Yeah, the finishing is by no means a finished answer. We don't know that he's
No,
going to be good, but it's a
for
very
sure.
encouraging sign early in his year. I mean, Mamu was like 6'9", 240, and Sarr put a shoulder into him and moved him back, and that wasn't the only good finish of the night for him. So that's something I would be very interested to see if it continues. Apparently, he's also dunking a lot more in practice and scrimmages. I think it was Kyshawn George who told reporters that. And, that's, again, an encouraging sign because he did not dunk the ball nearly enough last season. As a screener, a lot of times last year he would do, the go screen, kind of like shove a guy a little bit, slip to the rim. I think that you're seeing less of that this year, or less of him kind of just doing that and popping. He's embracing that physicality, at least early on. He's trying to diversify when he's popping, when he's rolling, and I think that should help in that area because it's not always about the screen itself. It's also about the threat that you are the second right after the screen. And so that's something that I'd like to see him diversify his game and how much more dangerous that can make him. What does a successful season look like for Alex Sarr?
I think improving the efficiency is the main thing for me. And, 39.4% from the field last year, 48.2% true shooting percentage. Like, that's just not going to cut it as a center in the modern NBA or any NBA, frankly. So I think, some of that last year was kind of experimenting and trying things, trying to expand his game. And I'm still fine with some of that. But I think we can cut out a lot of the mid-range jumpers that he would take last year. Like he shot only 32.4% on 71 attempts last year from the 10 to 16-foot range, and that's a little over one a game for him. I think he only played 67 games last season. So I don't know if we need that. I think again, I kind of go back to that first play where instead of taking the mid-ranger, he just, kind of bullied his way to the rim. So I'm still fine with the occasional like mid-post touch and see what he can do. Like I think that's okay, but I do want to see kind of a shift in his process and the types of shots he's taking and how efficient he can be. So that would be a successful season to me for Sarr.
Yeah, I thought that there should have been an assistant coach last year for the Wizards whose only job was to like throw a tomato at Alex every time he took a turnaround jumper. Like that was, oh my God, it was the worst last year. And I think that's something that can be a part of his game, but that's a late clock answer. That's a last resort thing. I don't want
For
you
sure.
turning to that unless you absolutely have to. More
Yep.
consistent aggressiveness is something I really want to see. Are you consistently playing with your hair on fire on offense and on defense? And the other thing I'd like to see, Sarr is a very good passer out of the short wall already. I think he has a very good understanding of, I've caught the ball around the free throw line, I'm going to the hoop, there's a guy in front of me, and instantly he can tell where everyone is on the court. Can you extend that to other parts of your game as well? Can it be something that really helps you as a defensive anchor when you're calling things out for your teammates? And then with the passing, he was a pretty good passer last year, especially for a big. when they used him on the DHOs and kind of used him as a hub from the top of the key, I didn't think he was particularly like great there. I thought he did what the offense asked him to as far as getting into the handoff game and getting the ball to the guards. But I'd like to see, are you able to find some more cutters this year? I thought that like there was a play where Tristan Vucevic finds Cam Whitmore cutting for a dunk, and that's something I didn't really see much of with Alex last year. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see him fake that handoff and then take it to the rim a little bit more, play with the ball in your hands, play with aggressiveness, and see what it gets to you. Are you able to create passes because you've created an advantage for the offense, and now there's space that you're able to exploit because you have this ability to kind of map the floor out?
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I think another area that I would like to see with his passing more is kind of the grab and go game in transition. Like, we know this team wants to play fast, and if he can improve his defensive rebounding, that'll kind of give him some more opportunities to, push the ball in transition. I mean, for a center, he's one of the faster centers in the league, and I think that could be something that we see a bit more of this year. So, but I agree with all that.
Yeah, the grab and go. I mean, when he gets in transition, it's a little mixed just because the dribble is a little bit loose at times and it can get in trouble. But when he gets going, he is, he can build up some speed and get downhill. And I think that can really work. Anything else you want to say about Sarr?
No, I think I mean, I don't want to overreact to one half of a preseason game, but like that was seriously everything I wanted to see. I mean, maybe aside from like some more use of the left hand around the rim, I don't have a whole lot of complaints. I think if he plays like that every game this year, we're going to be really happy with his season and thinking about him as a long-term piece here. So, yeah, I think I'm good on Sarr. So,
are you confident in his 3-point shot eventually down the line? Do you think it's going to be a weapon for him?
I do. I do. I actually am pretty confident in his 3-point shot. I think, especially as like a kind of release valve at the end of a shot clock, if the big is kind of sagging off, like I certainly think he'll be good enough to warrant taking some threes like that. If he can become a legit like Miles Turner type of stretch five pick and pop big, that's where I might be skeptical. So I guess I don't know where the volume will land and how big of a weapon it is for him, but I do think he'll be a low 30s type of 3-point shooter who you can take one or two a game at least. I think he can at least get to that level for sure.
I think eventually in his career, he needs to become a mid-30s guy. And I think Miles Turner is actually a really good comparison. I think Chet is a name that you sometimes hear thrown around for Alex. Mobley is a name, or Jaren Jackson Jr. Those are the high-end comps, obviously. I do think that Miles Turner is a pretty good option as someone who you are really happy with as a starting center because of the versatility in his package, but maybe not the top-end guy that some of these other guys in the league are. Okay, let's move on to the next player, who is one of the youngest Wizards, one of the newest Wizards, Tre Johnson. What impresses you most about him?
Shooting.
Yeah.
Shooting. That's not
there we
going
go.
to be a surprise. Yeah. No, but he is an insane shooter. Really high free throw percentage in college, as well as, hitting just a ridiculous percentage on threes. I mean, and I think the shooting is going to be the key for him to unlock whatever star potential he might have, especially with the ball in his hands. He shot 42% on threes out of pick and roll in college, which is just a ridiculous number. So I think if he is going to become a star player, the shooting has to be like at the elite level of guards in the NBA. And, I think he definitely has all the indicators that he could get to that level. So, saw it a little bit last night against the Knicks, got him going. I like the way the Wizards used him last night in terms of, running some more movement, kind of off-ball screening actions for him at the start of the game. But you can just see the type of shooter he is. Like, it's crazy. So he may not be the greatest athlete, but the shooting is what's going to unlock any type of star potential for him.
Yeah, 100%. Yesterday, we're recording this Tuesday, so Monday against the Knicks, he has that transition three. That's exactly the kind of thing, because he's not only a threat off the catch, but he's also a threat off the dribble. And I think that, like you said, the Wizards are weaponizing him well in a lot of ways. That's both using him on a lot of off-ball actions. I think they got some good success when they used him as a screener or a fake screener. He draws so much attention that the defense has to focus on him. Sarr's dunk against Toronto, where he and Middleton run that pick and roll. I think you noted this on Twitter. The off-ball movement with him and Kyshawn George is what keeps. I think it was Grady Dick who was supposed to be the low man. He's not in position to help on the Sarr roll, and that's why Sarr gets his open dunk. And that's, again, we talk about gravity with players like Steph, and Tre Johnson has a lot of room before he's anything close to a shooter like Steph is, but that's where that kind of, he's a 5-alarm fire when he's got the ball on the perimeter, and that's how you can exploit it beyond just, obviously, hitting three-pointers.
For sure. And I think that's why he is a good fit in this Wizards offense in a lot of ways, because they don't really play like a stagnant style of offense. There's a lot of kind of dribble handoff, zoom actions where you got players coming off of pin downs and all sorts of movement. And I think the more that Tre Johnson just moves, it's going to stress out the defense. And so I think he's a good fit for how this team wants to play as well.
I'm intrigued by his playmaking. He had a couple nice passes to Marvin Bagley. The Wizards have said that he's a little bit ahead of schedule there than even they thought. I know that you were a little bit higher on his playmaking coming into the draft. I thought he was just okay at Texas, but first two games, I've been intrigued.
Yeah, the passing is really not the concern for me with Tre. I mean, we can get to what are some of the concerns I have with him, but I think the intersection of shooting, and especially like the ability to shoot on the move and off the dribble, and the passing at his size was why he was, such an intriguing prospect to me, and clearly an intriguing prospect to the Wizards as well. So
absolutely. What concerns you about Tre Johnson? For me, it's like you talked about. He's not a great athlete. You saw this even in the first two games. The Raptors were smothering him, and again, this is in part because the Raptors are a really aggressive team. He's a rookie. He's 19 years old. His head is spinning, I think, right? And that's understandable. But his lack of athleticism shows up in he's not able to create space for himself on the ball so far in the pros. And there were a couple of times where I thought he did a good job. There was one example in the Knicks game where Kispert throws a cross-court pass, and because of how I think it was Jordan Clarkson was closing out on Tre, he's moving one way, and Tre catches the ball on the move in the other way, and he blows past him for a layup. And I thought that was really well done. And those are the little tricks that he's going to need to use to turn the shooting threat that he has into an ability to create space, because the athleticism is not what's going to create space for him.
Yep. That was actually my kind of number one concern, was how does Tre Johnson create his own offense without a screen at the NBA level? I think he's going to be awesome kind of on a bunch of different like off-ball actions, handoffs, pin downs, curls, back screens. That he got a bucket off a back screen against the Knicks. I do eventually think he'll be a pretty good pick and roll player as well, because of his ability to pass and shoot off the dribble. But I just wonder, what does it look like, when he has to, like you said, create space for himself against NBA athletes? I think improving his ability to play through contact and his strength is going to be massive in that regard, because he isn't ever going to really have like the greatest first step. And I think one other thing I'd like to see from him is extending his range even further out, just to give him like more space to kind of drive and create advantages off the dribble. There are some players in the NBA who maybe aren't the greatest athletes, but just have, ridiculous range, and it gives them that ability to still drive and be able to touch the paint. So that's something I think he could do. But again, it all goes back to like the shooting kind of opening everything else for him. But yeah, that would be my chief question, is like, how does he create offense without a screen?
Is there a player you think is a similar athlete to him that's able to create space for themselves consistently without a screen? The first name that comes to mind, and this might be a little unfair to this player, but Devin Booker-ish. That's obviously a high-end comp, but if you're looking at the optimistic case, is it something like that?
I think so. I like the Booker comparison. I do think Booker's a bit better of an athlete, a little bit better, but he has also improved his strength a ton since he's gotten in the league. Like, Booker is really physical. And so I think if Tre did that, like, I think that could be definitely a similar kind of outcome. I've always used Tyler Hero as the best
Mm.
outcome. I think Hero's like a kind of half step down of an athlete from Devin Booker, and I think a more comparable athlete to a Tre Johnson. So that's always been the comparison for me is Tyler Hero, and I think they're similar in a ton of ways. So if he can be a Tyler Hero type of player, I mean that's an all-star level guy. So that would be pretty nice.
Yeah, if he's able to get stronger, and then the other best thing about Trey, I think, is his length. He's got like a 6'10" wingspan, and that allows him to be. I think it gives him a 4 on defense down the line. I think right now he's young. I don't think he's going to be good on defense this year, but that's fine. Again, he's a rookie, but eventually that length is going to give him a floor on defense. I also think it should allow him with shot creation because he's able to shoot over guys. Even if you're not able to create space, if you're able to create some vertical space with your jump shot, and that can be helpful as well. I do think extending the range, like you mentioned, that's something that can be really helpful just because now the pickup point gets further and you can beat guys off a dribble just because they're not able to give you any space at all.
Mhm.
What does a successful season look like for Tre Johnson?
I kind of struggled with this one. I would just say like improvement throughout the year. I think
Mm.
I'd love to see him make an all rookie team, especially like first team all rookie, or be even in the conversation for top 2 or 3 in rookie of the year voting. All of those things would be great, but like I just want to see the steady improvement throughout the year, and I want him to look like somebody that belongs. I think rookie seasons can be really up and down, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does have some struggles, but that's just kind of what I want to see from him. If we can, go into next season and say, well, like Trey got way better from game 1 to game 82, I think I'll be pretty happy with that. So
If you see that improvement, what areas would it be in?
I would love to see him get better on defense because to
Mm.
me, if we can just see some improvement on defense, I think you're looking at a very long term, like high level starter, just because of even if the off the dribble game that we've been talking about doesn't really come around and he doesn't reach that kind of star level outcome. If I can feel good about the defense after his rookie season, like he's going to be a long term piece here for sure because of the threat of the shooting. So if there's one thing I'd like to see improvement on and feel better about, it's the defense.
Yeah, because at that point you've got big guard, length, shooting, defense, and enough creation that he can definitely attack a closeout well.
For sure.
And
Yes.
that's again a high
Yes.
level starter for sure.
That's
For
someone that
me,
makes a lot of money in the league.
yes,
So
absolutely. For me, and this is something I'm taking a little bit. I talked to his trainer for a story that's going to be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll say. And his trainer told me that the biggest questions he had ahead of Trey's rookie year was ability to make shots and space the floor. That's the same thing for me. Just show me that the shooting translates because that's number one. That's a skill that's supposed to get you here. It should translate, but there have been times where, like, Kyshawn George was a great shooter in college. It didn't show during his first year, and we'll get to that in a bit. I expect the shooting to translate, but it would be comforting to see it show up. First 20
yeah,
games, if he's shooting 40% from three, okay.
for
The
sure.
NBA length, the NBA size, it's not the NBA speed is not totally throwing him off.
Hmm. For sure.
Perfect. Anything else on Tre Johnson?
No, I'm very excited to watch him play. I have high expectations for him. He's one of my favorite players that the Wizards have drafted in the last few years. So I'm very excited for his rookie season.
There we go. Same here. Let's move to Bub Carrington. What impresses you most about Bub Carrington? This is going to be, I'm very interested to see where you go with this conversation. Bub is a player I'm struggling to figure out.
Yeah, I would say the pick and roll play is what impresses me the most. I still think that's where he's at his best. Um, I think especially against drop coverage because that's kind of designed to give up those mid-range jumpers where he excels. But I think he makes pretty good passing reads. I think he's pretty good at keeping defenders on his hip when he does get them there. I think he plays with really good pace. Like all of this stuff, the elevation he gets on his jumper, all of this stuff should make for someone that is a very effective pick and roll player in the league. Um, I don't know if he's gotten the type of like volume there to really see what he can do. I think a lot of times last year he was playing a bit more off the ball than I liked, but when he is on the ball, like he just doesn't really get to the rim. So that's where I'm struggling a little bit as well. But I will go with the pick and roll play as the thing that impresses me most about him.
I'm trying to find how he did in pick and rolls last year. Let's see. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
that would
ran
love
about
to.
like three a
Yeah.
game, 0.85 points per possession. That's a little bit above below average. 41.7% field goal percentage. Yeah, I mean the on-ball creation out of pick and rolls and out of ball screens in general, whether that's a DHO, whether it's a traditional pick and roll, all that stuff. That's some best things so far. When he's got the defender on his hip, he's able to do good stuff. I have not been as impressed with his passing as I think some other people are. I think it's good
Mhm.
in transition. I think he does very well making the simple right play. I don't see a lot of advanced, cross court passes, making quick reads in those areas. Even in just running pick and rolls, I don't see him getting the ball to the roll man effectively that often. And a lot of that is because he's not getting to the rim either. But the
Mhm.
things that I like, the number one thing for me is, and you can go back and forth on how important this will end up being, but the pull up three, the pull up jump shot in general. NBA.com tracked him as taking 371 pull up shots last year. Out of 53 players who had at least 300 attempts, he was 13th in effective field goal percentage. That's really good, especially as a rookie. I like to see that efficiency go over to the catch and shoot side and just in general, but that's a really good start for a player to build off of.
Yeah, I think to the passing point, I think he makes the right play a lot of the times. I wouldn't say he's like an overly manipulative passer
Mm-hmm.
with his
That's a great way
eyes.
to
I don't
put it.
think he's like moving the defense or finding like creative passing angles, but I think he's a very solid decision maker. I think is the best. I don't think he's a great passer, but I think he makes pretty good decisions generally. And it was really good to see the pull up shooting translate out to three to his rookie season because I think that's something I want to see him kind of lean into even more is taking even more threes off the dribble this year.
I would like to see more threes. I would like to see less mid-range shots. That's
Mhm.
the biggest thing for me. I'm like, we can talk about the analytical stuff, and the mid-range has a place in the modern NBA. It should not be your primary answer in the modern NBA. On the passing point, is the manipulative stuff something you think can come with time? I think it can. I mean, he's a young player. There's space to grow, especially because of the nuance he shows in the pick and roll right now. I would like to see him do more of that and become. He needs to become a really good passer at some point in time. I think for him to be a
Yeah.
really good player.
Yeah, I do think that can come around, especially when you have such a good baseline to build from, which he does. And he's so young, I think with increased reps and all that stuff. I do think it can come around, but some of that stuff is just kind of natural, like feel
True.
for the game, and I think it kind of depends on the player. So I think that remains to be seen, but I would like to see him be a little bit more crafty in the paint in terms of like playing off 2 feet and utilizing pivots and shot fakes and things like that. I think that could open up some like passing windows for him. I think a lot of times he gets in the paint, he seems a little sped up, whereas he plays with good patience and poise in a lot of other areas on the court. So, um, yeah.
I think the best moments for him, especially when he has the ball in his hands, is when he's slowing it down and playing again with pace and changing speeds and got the defender on his hip and now he's moving past a big man and the second he gets into the paint and is trying to finish, I think it gets really really fast for him, and that's where you just like to see those steps of his game continue. And I'd also like to see him play with that pace more consistently. We've kind of got into this stuff already, but let me ask the question: what concerns you most about Bub Carrington?
Strength.
Yeah,
That is like the number one thing for me. I think if you're going
it
to
shows up
not
everywhere
be,
in his game.
yes, yes. If you're going to be a, let's just say, not great athlete as a guard, for NBA standards, I think you really have to make up for it with the strength and physicality. And it shows up on both ends, like you said. I mean, he picked up 3 quick fouls in the Raptors game. I think a lot of it was because he wasn't handling bumps on the defensive end and absorbing contact very well. And then I think, it goes back to the offensive end as well. I think it really limits him as a driver and as a finisher. And even in the pick and roll, which I think is to me like the strongest aspect of his game right now, I do think at times he can struggle to maintain an advantage off a screen because he doesn't necessarily have the strength to like hold the defender behind him. I mean, I think Kyshawn George, we'll get to him. I think he does like a great job of this off of ball screens. So the strength is like the whole thing for me. And I think if he can figure that out, um, I think I'll be feeling a lot better about him than I maybe do right now. But the strength shows up for me on both ends for him.
There's a lot of reason to think that the strength will improve. Again, I think Bub is 19. He was one of the youngest guys in his draft class. He's still exceptionally young and has a lot of room to grow as a player. But the
Yep.
strength is something that shows up again and again. He's not, kind of like Tre Johnson, he's not a great athlete when it comes to the first step or anything like that. And that shows on defense, especially when you combine it with the lack of strength. With the ball, I thought the Raptors pressured him like crazy in that first game, and I don't think he did particularly well. There were multiple turnovers where, man, there was one press break where he's just speeding up the floor and he's going really fast. And I understand why he's going fast because the quicker you cross half court, and we saw this with the Pacers last year, the quicker you cross half court, the more time you have to get into actions. It's one more action you can get into, and maybe before the shot clock gets down, and you could see him rushing, but on this play, he just gets up and Tre's kind of there. The spacing is not good on this press break, but Bub just gets forced to the sideline and he kind of loses his balance and it's a turnover, right? And you see stuff like that happen way too often. And I think that he's got to get better in those areas for sure. Not much rim pressure. That's the number one thing that I think people talk about Bub. He's talked about it. I think it's something he wants to get better at. Just 17th percentile among combo guards in the percentage of the shots he takes at the rim. Also 17th percentile in the percentage he shoots when he gets there. This makes sense, I think. He was a guy who had a late growth spurt. He played a lot against taller guys growing up. You know, he hasn't had an NBA height or a taller guard's height for most of his basketball days, but that's something he's going to have to develop as time goes on. I also want to see the shot selection improve. Way too many mid-rangers. I mean, this was a problem during the season last year. It was a problem in Summer League. I remember seeing like a couple early shot clock pull-up mid-range shots that like I was on press row. I was not feeling good about them.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I cited the strength because the finishing is the biggest hole in his game. But I don't, you can get more athletic and more explosive for sure. But I don't think he's ever just going to be blowing by,
Yes,
defenders.
absolutely.
So if he is going to improve in terms of finishing around the rim and drawing fouls, I want him to draw more fouls as well. And to me, that's strength. That's how he's going to improve in those areas. So I completely agree though. That's the biggest hole in his game right now. So
If he's not going to be a player who puts consistent rim pressure, what do you think his career looks like? Let's say I think the shooting is going to be something that becomes a skill for him, a decidedly above average skill for him. I think the fact that he shoots well, I think he shoots well on free throws. He obviously shoots well on the pull-ups. I think that's going to translate to the catch and shoot game. But if the rim pressure never becomes a thing for him, because it doesn't for some guards, right? What is his long-term future look like in that scenario?
I think this kind of goes into my answer for what a successful season for him is going to be.
Perfect.
So I'll just kind of lead into that. I think finding what role is best for Bub is really important this season because I think they're kind of trotting him out now as a potential lead guard for this offense. Like he is the point guard of the starting lineup as it currently stands. I'm skeptical that he can be that type of player. But then is he kind of like a combo guard where he's playing off the ball and on the ball a little bit? I think the shooting needs to like really reach a pretty high end outcome there if he's going to be that type of player because I still think he hesitates too often on catch and shoot threes.
Yeah.
Like I really noticed it in the Raptors game. I thought against the Knicks he did better of just catching and firing, off the catch. I also don't know if he's like the greatest closeout attacker. And so I think a lot of times he turns down these catch and shoot threes and then tries to attack a closeout and it leads to like a 18-foot jumper. And I just rather see him shoot that off the catch. Or is he like a sixth man type of guy, like a third guard for your team, that first guard off the bench? I think that could be easier for him long term in terms of like defending against second unit guards rather than, going up against a starting backcourt. I just think this season for him, if we can kind of leave the year and have more clarity on what his role is long term, I think that would be a successful season for him because I still think he's too skilled and smart and he's so young. I still think he's going to be a good NBA player. I just don't know exactly what that role is yet.
Yeah, if he's going to be playing if he eventually moves to an off the ball role, one, the shooting has to become lights out, and like you talked about, those catch and shoot threes have to become
Mhm.
instantaneous. The second thing is I struggle with that because I do think that's a very plausible outcome for him down the line. But the best thing that he does right now is the pick and roll creation with the ball in his hands. And so if you take that away, that's one of the best parts of his game. And the other best part of his game that I think we've talked about is the pull up jump shot, which again, you need the ball in your hands to do that. And so
Yeah,
trying to figure out what the role looks like for him and where he needs to upgrade his skills if he's going to have a role like this is something I'm very interested in. I do want to see this year for what makes a successful season. He's going to have the ball a lot more. Show me that you're able to slow the game down and make good reads. I'd like to see good shot selection, some manipulation with the passes. I like to see you play with a good understanding of time and score. Speed the game up when you need to and when the team wants to play fast. This is something they talk about nonstop. But are you able to do that with structure inherent in your game as well? And then on defense, be okay. Be a little bit better at screen navigation. Be really attentive off the ball. Be hyperactive. When you get up near a guy, try and crowd him. Play to your strengths as much as possible and become a. I don't think you're going to become a good defender at this point in your career, but can you be a okay, slightly below average
yeah,
defender instead of one of the worst in the league?
for sure. I agree with all that. I think if I could add maybe one more point
Sure.
on kind of finding the role for him, the Wizards have a lot of cap space next offseason, and they're going to have another high draft pick, and I just think it will help kind of provide that clarity to the front office
Absolutely.
and how to build this team long term, because I think next offseason for the Wizards is a huge turning point in the rebuild with all the cap space that they have now created with the Jordan Poole trade and CJ McCollum's expiring deal, and Chris Middleton's expiring deal. So that's kind of the other point for me is I think what does the team see for him long term?
The role for a guy like Bub Carrington becomes drastically different if, Darren Peterson is here next year, right? And so
Hmm.
this is the year where you get to show yourself and also show the front office, oh, maybe that front office or maybe that cap space doesn't need to go to taking on bad contracts from other teams to try to get more first round picks. Maybe this can be a time when we try and fast forward things a little bit by getting in some free agents.
For sure.
Anything else on Bub?
No, I think we covered it.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to Kyshawn George. I think this is probably maybe the player that both of us are most excited to talk about. Maybe just for me. What impresses you most about Kyshawn George?
Everything is that is that
I
an
saw the
okay
fist
answer?
bump.
Oh man,
He's great. I'm so excited to watch him this season.
I don't want to get ahead of myself because it's a preseason game. It's one half of a preseason game, but the ease with which he was getting to his spots against the Knicks was like eye-opening to me. I think he is just so much stronger than when he came in last year. Like he is just bullying dudes on the way to the rim. I think his finishing looks better. I love that he's kind of starting to play off of 2 feet more. He did that a couple times last night in the paint, and was able to get a finish. I really think his all around game is very impressive. And the biggest criticism for him his rookie season was that he didn't shoot the ball well. When, as a prospect, that was what he did. He shot over 40% from three at Miami. Like that was the thing he was best at. So I still have faith in that turning around. And that's why I just kind of said everything, because every other aspect of his game has impressed me so much with the defensive playmaking. What do you have? 4 blocks against the Raptors. Like the guy is just a beast on that end of the floor, and then the passing and the ball handling. And now we're starting to see some of the self creation on offense. Like if the shooting just gets back to what pretty much everyone thought it would be before the draft, like we got a stud on our hands. So I'm just very excited for his season and kind of just impressed with his overall game.
He was one of the players who I thought improved a lot as the season went on last year, and it's been a pretty
Mhm.
consistent upward trajectory, even going into Summer League, AmeriCup, and now into the preseason. He's a player that I think plays with the best pace on the Wizards of the young guys. He constantly feels like he's playing at his own speed. He has great feel with the ball in his hands, and I think he has really nice vision. There was a play against the Knicks where he turns the corner off I think it was a pick and roll or a DHO with Bagley, and he's dribbling with his left hand, and he's going so slowly. He sees that I think it was Yabusele was a center, was retreating, and is able at that point to cut off Kyshawn's drive. And so Kyshawn just kind of slows it down. He's got the defender on his hip. He's so strong that guy has no chance of getting to the ball, and that allows Marvin Bagley to start his roll to the rim, and that just makes Yabusele go up ever so slightly. And now then Kyshawn instantly attacks and then powers inside, gets an and one. That is such advanced playmaking. I don't know how much he's realizing that in real time, but even just the spatial awareness to feel that big man and kind of understand how to manipulate him, that was really impressive. It stood out to me really well.
Mm-hmm. I think his handle looks like wildly different this year.
Unbelievably better.
Yeah, I mean the ease with which he's like changing directions and changing pace with the ball in his hands while dealing with contact. Like I remember his first summer league, like he was fumbling the ball around against pressure. Like, it was not an area of his game I would have said was a strength. Like he's, to me, clearly, it seems like put in work in that area of his game. And I think that is really impressive because I think he's always been a really high feel and high IQ player. And now that he's got the strength and the handle to kind of pair with that in a, 6'7", 6'8" frame, like these are the type of guys that, every team's looking for in the NBA these days. So, yeah, I'm very impressed with how he's looked over the summer and, 2 games through preseason.
The handle, I don't think, is like a decidedly above average skill for him yet. There are still a couple of times where I see him fumble the ball a little bit. There was a couple of times in the next game. But from where it was to where it is now, that's a lot of improvement. And he's someone that you feel comfortable putting the ball in his hands now. And then the other thing that stood out to me on the other side, we saw the defensive playmaking show up late last season. And it has continued since. Like you said, I think it was multiple blocks against the Raptors. He is consistently in the right spot. He's early with his help. He's got great length. He's got great patience. Still probably fouls a little bit too much. I want to see how that gets going as the season goes on. But that's something that you're willing to deal with at this point in his career.
Yeah, he's so good as the low man on defense, like rotating over. And that's one of the more valuable type of things you can do on defense in the modern NBA. I thought with the foul aspect, he did foul a ton last year. I thought he did a better job against the Knicks on the ball of just kind of showing his hands. Like, I love the defensive playmaking. I just think he has to find that balance of when to be aggressive and when to show your hands, because I want him out there for 30 plus minutes a night. And in order to do that, he's got to stay out of foul trouble. So I thought we saw some improvement there in the preseason so far.
One thing I really liked is how he and Sarr have blended their defensive playmaking at times. I think this was against Toronto in the preseason. They're both involved in a pick and roll, and Kyshawn, I think, is a little bit behind the play. So Sarr has to step up, and that opens up the pocket pass to, I think it was Mogbo down low. He gets the ball, and he goes up, and Kyshawn's flying in there for a block, and I think it ends. That's the play that ended with the wedgie, right?
I remember that play. Yep.
That is the exact kind of play where you could see both of their instincts for the ball showing up, and they're covering for each other now, which I think could really interesting to see how that partnership fares as the season goes along. Because if Sarr is playing out on the perimeter, and one of the things we love about Sarr is his switchability and his ability to do different things, you need someone else who's able to keep things centered down low, and that's something where Kyshawn can be really effective, because I think he's still better off the ball than on it right now. I also think that with him and with Bub, this has shown up, these are two guys who want to be leaders and are starting to step into those roles a little bit more as the year goes on, and that's something I'm really curious to see how that progresses and how they're able to, these are two of the most important players for this rebuild. How are they able to put their mark on this locker room?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What concerns you most about Kyshawn George?
I would say 2-point scoring. So just scoring in general inside the arc. Last season, only shot 60% at the rim, which is not awful, but it's not great. And just 46% overall from 2-point range. I mean, we already talked about it. I have faith in the 3-pointer coming around. Like, I just believe in him as a shooter. So this is, to me, the biggest area of concern. I think for him as a finisher, like, leaning into the physicality will be huge for him and help him draw more fouls as well, which would be huge. And I think playing off of 2 feet, and we saw some of that against the Knicks, but he's so crafty. And when you play off of 2 feet, like you're able to kind of have those like post dribble counters where even if you haven't totally just blown by your man, you can still pivot and shot fake and throw in a spin move. And he's got the type of strength, to kind of play and keep his balance on 2 feet in the lane. So I think really leaning into that would be a way that he can improve as a finisher because I think he has really good touch around the rim. I think it's more so the athletic limitations. And then just improving as like a mid-range shooter would be huge just as a, late clock situation. If he is going to be a guy that plays with the ball in his hands a lot, that's still like a really effective counter to have late in the clock. I think, we've seen him kind of post up a little bit, which is fun. And he's kind of done that to score or to kind of run some type of split action off of the post or other things like that. So I think kind of playing through him in the post as well would be something that I would just like to see more and a way that I think he can be effective inside the arc. But yeah, those are kind of some of my overall thoughts. But I think 2-point scoring inside the arc would be the thing for me.
Yeah, similar thing for me. At some point, I would like to see the shots actually go down. He was the 19th percentile in shooting percentage at the rim among wings, 28th percentile on threes. I do think, especially on the side of the three-pointer, that's going to get better. He shot well in America Cup, again, small sample size, but the shot looks good. I think he takes good shots. There's not a crazy amount of arc on the ball, but I don't think that's absolutely necessary. I do think that at some point his three-point shooting is going to be a strength, but until you see it, it still remains an open question.
Yeah. If we're 25, 30 games into the season and he's still struggling from three, then I would say that I'll be concerned. But we did see that steady growth for him as a shooter last year, and I think that will continue. But definitely still, he needs to prove it for sure.
Worth monitoring, right?
Yes.
What do you think his ceiling is as a player? Because I've heard different things. You hear Nick Batum float around a decent amount. I like that comparison a lot. I'm curious, is that the high-end outcome? Because Nick Batum, really good player at his peak.
Oh, man. I don't want to say something stupid.
Oh, man. Let me tell you something. He had some slow foot finishes that remind me of a certain player who was traded in a massive deal recently, whose name I'm not willing to say yet in these conversations.
I think the ceiling is a little higher than Nick Batum. I will say that.
What is Nick? If you're putting like a percentile outcome, where is Nick Batum? Is Nick Batum like the 60th percentile outcome, 75th? I think I would go with 70th right now.
I would go around like 75th percentile outcome because Nick Batum was an awesome player and is still a solid player in the league. So I think that is, if he's Nick Batum, I'd be thrilled with that. That means he's a long-term starter here on the wings. And one of the most valuable archetypes is that big two-way wing. Mm-hmm. But I do think the creation and some of the driving stuff, like you mentioned, kind of the deceleration around the basket, I think that's always something that a lot of star players have. I don't know, man. I did not
say the name.
Even...
I could tell you. You're getting up to it.
I will not.
Who do you think he could be? What's 100 percentile outcome? Say something reckless.
I actually don't have a great player comp. I wish I did, but I will say I don't think all-star games are out of the question. So I'll say that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
What is a successful season for Kyshawn George this year?
I think establishing himself as a long-term starter on the wing and someone that we are just penciling in as a core piece, one of the top 2 or 3 pieces of the rebuild moving forward, is a successful season. And honestly, that is what I expect to see from him this year. I think we're going to leave this season and say he's either, the best piece currently in the rebuild or definitely one of the best pieces currently in the rebuild.
Would you slot him ahead of Bilal right now in the organizational pecking order?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
think so.
I have been a huge Bilal fan, and I was not a Kyshawn George fan when we drafted him. I did not like this pick. So this is coming from someone that felt differently 12 months ago. I think Kyshawn is ahead of Bilal. But if Bilal, I know we're not talking about Bilal today, but if the shooting comes around for him, I'm still
it's totally different. He's younger than Kyshawn, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I just think the overall game that we've seen from Kyshawn, I do think I would slot him ahead of Bilal right now.
with the caveat that it's way too early, and this season will honestly be the
Hmm.
one that really makes the
Well,
obviously influences a lot.
yeah.
I would agree with you. For me, it's start making shots, start showing that
Hmm.
all of the theoretical stuff is actually coming into practice. Continue your defensive playmaking, and then when you're on the ball, continue trying to be an ambitious passer because that's one of the things I love about him. I don't remember
Hmm.
where this play was from. I was gonna tweet it out, and then I got distracted and I didn't. But he whipped a cross court, one hand live dribble pass to the weak side corner in one game last season, and or maybe at summer league, and it was impressive. That was great. Do things like that. Continue to be ambitious with the ball in your hands, but cut down on the turnovers while you do it because he was a very high turnover player last year. That's to be expected. He's young, but at some point in time, that's got to come down.
I agree with that.
And anything else on Keyshawn George?
No, I feel like I usually try to be measured when talking about these players in terms of like, you know, theoretical outcomes for them and things like that. But I had to contain myself for this one. I'm very excited. That is all I will say.
It was like the last 2 months, last 2 months of the regular season, leading into summer league, leading into America. It's a really consistent upward trajectory. It's
Yep.
also worth reminding ourselves and everyone listening, all the Wizards fans, development is not linear in the NBA for
Mhm.
players or for teams. You never know how things might change for players after early flashes. So always worth
Yep.
keeping in mind. Let's talk about the next player, Cam Whitmore. What has impressed you most about Cam Whitmore?
I think the intersection of shooting and physical tools is very impressive. And typically, these type of guys really stick in the league for a long time, even if they're not star players. So I don't know if I have super high expectations for Cam Whitmore in terms of becoming like, a star level wing in the NBA. But I mean, I loved this trade just because, giving up two second
Cost you
round picks
nothing.
for a
Yeah.
guy, yeah, with this intersection of shooting and size and strength and athleticism, like he should be able to find a role in this league. So
Mhm.
that is what impresses me most about him.
Yeah, for me, it's a straight line athleticism, right? This is
Yeah.
someone who's, when he gets going downhill, it is a sight to see. He is big, he is strong, and he is explosive in a way that I think Bilal is very explosive as a player, but Bilal, it's more like vertical explosion and kind of side to side. With Cam, it's a mix of that explosion, and then he's just a bigger guy. He's a developed guy, and you see that. He's a little shorter than I thought he was. He is more on the like he's a 2-3 hybrid is kind of I see it rather than a 2-3-4 can switch between all those positions. Although he was
I
guarding
agree. I
Scotty
agree
Barnes
with
at
that.
points, so whatever that's
I,
up to.
I think some of his strength helps him like play a little bigger than
True.
he is and maybe guard some of these bigger players. But yeah, I do think he's more of a 2-3 than a
Yeah.
true like power forward type.
For me, the defensive playmaking is also intriguing. There were a lot of times in the first two preseason games where you could see him really trying to play off his instincts to try and deflect passes. He did that multiple times. I think there's value there if he's able to stay locked into the game on defense because he's empowered to do such a thing. I am curious what happens as defense or as other teams get a better read on that and exploit that, by just playing off his aggressiveness. What concerns you
Yeah.
most about Cam Whitmore?
I think two things. I would say just overall decision making and also just like buying into a role here,
Mm,
which I actually think he's done a great job of through two preseason games. I think the kind of role he's played is kind of what I envision for him. I've loved his willingness to shoot off the catch. I think he's been great as a cutter through two games, which is something, I mean, with how explosive he is around the rim, like he's going to be a very effective cutter if he leans into that. And then with the decision making, I think like, shot selection um, was an issue for him last year with the Rockets. And I also, off the ball on defense, I really want to see him remain focused and locked in. I think um, I've liked his like activity in the passing lanes so far. He's gotten out and gotten a couple steals, but there's also been moments where, he miscommunicated with Bub in the Knicks game and
hmm
it resulted in a wide open layup. He fouled a 3-point shooter in the corner and he wasn't really in the right position. He was one pass away and was just kind of sagging off of him for reasons I'm not
And
super aware of. And
on
then it
that
was not a
play,
great closeout. And I
exactly.
just,
Yes, thank
yeah.
you.
So,
The closeout, it was that, and then another time where he doesn't get a hand up. He kind of just like taps the guy on the chest, and that's how he got the
yeah,
foul the first time.
yeah. So, the off ball defense needs to get better. I've actually liked what I've seen from him on the ball on defense
Hmm.
so far. I think he's given really good effort, and I think he's strong and he's done a good job of keeping guys in front. But yeah, I think off the ball defense and then offensively, like just shot selection, decision making, and buying into more of an off ball role.
There's been a decent amount of ball watching for him through the first couple of games, and that's where you can see the off-ball awareness, which was a question coming into Washington. I think still is a bit of a question. There were a couple of times where he would have been burned for offensive rebounds, but the ball just bounced a different way. The decision making on offense is something I am continuously going to keep an eye on throughout the season, because he has always been a ball dominant player and a shot dominant player. He's not creating for others really at all, to be honest. And he doesn't actually finish well at the rim, which really surprised me when I dove into the numbers. He was in the 22nd percentile among forwards last season in shooting percentage at the rim, according to Cleaning the Glass. And you can see that happen sometimes because he does. This is something that I think Jalen Green also had trouble with, which is just poor rim decisions. You're able to get into the paint, you're able to get to the rim, but what are you doing when you get there? There were multiple times against Toronto where I thought there were wide open kickouts that he could have gotten to that he did not take. Some of the time
Yep.
he was able to finish. He finished one of those for an and one, and maybe that's a better option. But there were other times where he has to adjust in midair for a layup, and I'm here like, hey man, Tre Johnson's wide open in the corner. You swing that there, it's an open three.
Yeah, I that is exactly what I was gonna say. Is I don't think I think that low rim finishing percentage is more of a function of shot selection than it is
Yes.
his ability to finish.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and watched a couple of games last year from the Rockets, and he was playing the Grizzlies, and there were like three guys in the paint, and one of them
Yeah.
was Jaren Jackson Jr. And he just like tried to go up and got blocked, and then a couple other times he kind of did the same thing. And I think he gets some of that tunnel vision as a driver, and he just doesn't really see kickouts. And that's something that I think I would really like to see him improve on, because he is so explosive. Like, he should be a good finisher, but I just think it's more of a decision making issue.
He draws so much attention anytime he gets into the paint because he's such
Yes.
a great finisher. Play off that. Like, make the game easier for yourself, because if you start making those passes, now the floor is going to open up for you more. I mean, like, it's hard to
Hmm.
help off Tre Johnson, but they know that they can do it if you're not going to be willing to make that pass there, or you're not able to see
Yeah.
that pass there. So that's something that, and again, these are split second decisions. These are incredibly difficult. It's so much easier when you're going back and watching it and whatever,
For sure.
75% speed. It looks a lot, oh my God, how did you not hit that guy? But these are passes that players who have the ball in the NBA need to make to play within the structure of a team offense, because even if that's not a open three, if it's, if the closeout gets there in time, Tre Johnson pump fake, now you're attacking, the cycle keeps moving, and that's how great offenses continuously put pressure on defenses.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think he's like underrated as a shooter. I think he's an
Hmm.
awesome shooter. The percentages last year, I believe he shot, I think it was either 34 or 35% from three, but like he takes them on a high volume. He
Yep.
takes them from deep off the dribble. Like, I think he has real gravity as a shooter. Um, it's really the decision making with the ball in his hands, because if he can be a great shooter off the catch, he can attack closeouts because he's good enough to put the ball on the floor. He can be a great cutter. Like, the role is very clear for him. He can be a good
Yeah.
defender. He's got all the tools. Like, it's really up to him to like buy into this role for me, and just improve some of these holes he has in his game. But like, there's a clear NBA wing in there somewhere,
Yeah, there's a high level NBA wing. There's maybe
for sure.
even if like I don't think you have to squint too hard to see star upside here. It's just that like there are very clear things that need to get better and have not gotten better throughout his time in the NBA. And
Mhm.
the Wizards are able to give him the opportunity to learn more through those mistakes than the Rockets were. But you got to learn through those mistakes.
Agreed. Agreed.
What is a successful season for Cam Whitmore?
I think if we leave this season and we can say that Cam Whitmore is for sure going to be a rotation player for the Wizards in 2026, I would consider that a success. If we can even leave this year saying that he's going to be the eighth man for the Wizards next year,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy with that. Again, for what the Wizards gave up to get him, like that would be an absolute slam dunk. And I do think that is very much attainable for Cam Whitmore to impress us and for the Wizards to feel good about him being a key rotation piece next season.
Be good at getting rim pressure. Be a little bit better as a decision maker with the ball in your hands. Pay attention off the ball on defense. You do those 3 things, I think you're well on your way to being a part of this team's core moving forward, and very important for a player who's entering year 3, getting a contract extension.
Yeah, I think the off-ball defense to me is the biggest part. I think that's the biggest reason he didn't play for the Rockets last year, because even if he can come in as kind of a spark plug off the bench, offensive piece, like if he doesn't have it going, you can not play him as many minutes. Like you can work with that type of player, but if he's just not going to pay attention off the ball, like you can't really work around that. So I think that is like the number one thing I want to see him make improvements on this season.
And the tools are there for it to happen on the defensive end, right? He is a great athlete. He's someone who has the ability to move side to side. On the ball, he looked great against Scotty Barnes. It's just, again, off the ball defense, just pay attention, be in the right spots, be early on your help, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Perfect. Anything else on Cam Whitmore?
I really liked how he's played through two preseason games, actually.
It's been pretty encouraging. The rim decisions are the only thing that stand out to me. There's still some of the red flags that still pop up, but I do think that the good stuff is also showing up, which is encouraging.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. All right, Jim, where can people find your work?
Yeah, I'm on Spotify, Apple Music. Just look up Wizards Weekly. I'm sure you'll find it. I think I'm going to have some guests on this year, try to have some more guests on this year, including Varun. So yeah, tune in. Would appreciate a follow. And if you want to follow me on X, it's at @Wiz_weekly. I like to post, some film breakdowns and things like that. So yeah.
Jim knows ball. I love seeing his video breakdowns. I love seeing the work he does. So please check it out. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Jim for coming on. He is a great follow for all Wizards fans. A reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on a podcast platform, please leave a 5-star rating or review. You can follow me and the show using the handles in the descriptions. Please check out my work at the Washington Post and elsewhere using the link tree. I'll be back next week with the last pod before the regular season kicks off. The NBA is back. I'll talk to you guys soon.